Counting sheep, dungeon style, Talia and Gorgu had made their way to the lands of the Knights of the Order of Sheep. These bleating heroes had access to unsavory magic that turned their enemies into harmless woolly creatures. Would Talia still be able to make short work of them?
Time for trouble and make it double, to denounce the evils of truth and love. Oops, wrong reference. Invincible! Well, almost. I am even more power. The power flows through my veins.
This time, the siblings managed to get into a fight even as the story was being read. Meanwhile, Gorgu continued to cry. Well, I guess it's up to me to tell a story. What helps you fall asleep better than a tale about sheep? Once upon a time, there, at the edge of the horizon and the map, stood the fortress of the Knights of the Order of Sheep, in all its architectural mediocrity.
No time for pictures. I'll admire the smoking ruins later. Forward, creatures! Architectural mediocrity is only allowed in dungeons.
But on her way to the fortress, Talia encountered one of the Knights of the Order of Sheep's fog machines. This produced a magical fog that, well, let's just say, had certain transformative properties, as the curious evil would surely find out soon enough. There it marched, the impatient evil's glorious army. But suddenly, the fog machine kicked in. A magical fog spread out, and ta-da! The terrifying creatures turned into fluffy little sheep. Even Talia, the general of evil, was not spared. Bah! I mean, how unfortunate. The woolly evil seemed to have suffered a minor setback. But fortunately, there was a possible solution. A sheep farm. There, dynamite sheep were bred, originally for a different video game. Explosive, determined, and conveniently immune to being turned into a sheep, the tactically minded evil might find this information useful.
These bleating clouds will pay for turning me into a sheep. They will suffer, they will scream, they will drench their fluffy wool cloaks with tears. Forward, my loyal minions, get me those explosive balls of wool.
payday. Ding dong, it's payday. Your little snots have dug up a spider.
The noble knights of the Order of Sheep had thrown off their cozy sheepskin bathrobes and donned their battle gear, and were now stumbling toward the dungeon. The eye-rolling evil was undoubtedly delighted to hear that the knights had brought their sharp swords with them, and their impressive armor. How thoughtful of them.
What? Those woolly-clad wannabe heroes dare to attack our dungeon? Forward, creatures! Show them what happens when you mess with evil! Rip their helmets from their heads and use them as soup bowls or bedpans!
Enemies have entered the dungeon.
The tactically minded evil's creatures were very close to the first sheep farm. The dynamite sheep bred there were the urgently needed key to destroying the pesky fog machines. Nothing screams combat superiority like explosive livestock. The strategy-minded evil noticed that the sheep farm was suddenly surrounded by a magic shield. tacky because that way it couldn't be taken. This protection seemed to depend on the protecting hero's life energies. Only when these had been eliminated could the sheep farm be taken. With a snap of its fingers, or whatever a hand gesture challenged evil does, the first sheep farm became part of its arsenal. At regular intervals, another explosive woolly marvel would be prepared, ready to be released at the impatiently waiting evil's command.
Now things are going to get explosive. These bleating bombs will show those knights what happens when you mess with evil. They'll be blown to smithereens. Their armor will hang in the trees like wind chimes, and their helmets will be used as fancy flower pots. Forward, my fluffy explosives. Bring the bang to this battle.
The forgetful evil approached a fog machine. A brief reminder seems appropriate. Only dynamite sheep could enter the treacherous fog unscathed. All other creatures would turn into bleating balls of wool faster than the impatient evil could yell, "Tactical retreat." Just a friendly reminder from someone who definitely doesn't want to see your entire army turned into a walking wool factory, even though that would be quite amusing. And there they appear, fresh dynamite sheep, summoned directly from the great nothing by the creative evil. They blinked in confusion, as if asking themselves, "Why do I exist?" A philosophical question that they would soon answer with a loud boo. Another dynamite sheep had decided to change jobs from explosives courier to explosive agent. An interesting career development.
Man-of-Wars have appeared in your dungeon.
There are enemies in your dungeon. It's payday.
Boom! Another fog machine ended its career as a functioning device and began a new life as a decorative scrap heap. The magical fog dissipated as quickly as my career plans for the theatre. But shortly thereafter, the knights arrived, as punctual as a tax assessment and just as welcome. The now battle-ready evil was surely delighted by these moving targets. More Dynamite Sheep took to the field at the explosion-loving evil's behest. They looked so innocent, until you noticed the slightly manic gleam in their eyes, and of course the ticking clocks hanging around their fluffy necks. But details, details.
The hero's wedding express was passing close by. Destroying it would not only feel good, but also generate a tidy amount of evilness. A gold vein is almost exhausted. payday. Creatures are collecting their pay.
One less dynamite sheep in the ranks of the absolute evil. It died as it lived, crammed full of highly explosive materials and with a remarkable disregard for safety regulations.
A few manivores have appeared in your dungeon. Manivores have appeared in your dungeon.
The tactically planning evil had summoned more woolly explosive devices into battle. The Knights of the Order of Sheep would not know whether to pet them or flee from them.
Manivores have been discovered in your dungeon. Payday. Your little snots have completely mined out a gold vein. Enemies have entered the dungeon. You've dug into a spider room. Manivores have appeared in your dungeon. A gold vein is almost exhausted.
I'll be back.
And there they appear, fresh dynamite sheets, summoned directly from the great nothing by the creative evil. They blinked in confusion, as if asking themselves, "Why do I exist?" A philosophical question that they would soon answer with a loud boom.
Defend the dungeon heart.
Once again, a fluffy little demolition expert turned itself into a significantly less fluffy fireball. The statistically inclined evil noted, sheep population down 1, craters up 1.
Nothing can stop me.
Payday! Creatures are collecting their pay. A carriage filled with heroes on home leave sped across the map. Intercepting this would definitely yield some evilness. Your little snots have completely mined out a gold vein. Enemies are in the dungeon.
Even in a sailor suit, I kick ass. Like, literally. Not like that dumb superhero.
And poof! A few dynamite sheep materialized out of thin air. The militarily innovative Evil revolutionized warfare. Why build complicated siege engines when you could just stuff sheep full of explosives? Ah, the sweet symphony of destruction. A dynamite sheep had made its last big appearance. An impressive performance. The Critical Evil awarded it 9 out of 10 points. 1 point was deducted for insufficient shrapnel spread.
Oh.
There are enemies in your dungeon.
Enemies are in the dungeon.
It's payday.
Another dynamite sheep had just turned itself into a spectacular fireball. The pyrotechnics-loving evil clapped its hands in delight. I'm sure the sheep would have done the same if it still had hands, or if it still existed.
The hero's wedding express was passing close by. Destroying it would not only feel good, but also generate a tidy amount of evilness.
The furrow-browed evil had made a most unpleasant discovery. The sheep farm was protected by a flickering magic shield. The source of this arcane barrier was fed by the life energy of the heroic guards nearby. Only when these selfless beings had received their let's call it existence status update, would the farm become accessible.
Enemies are in the dungeon.
A few new dynamite sheep entered the theater of battle. The creature summoning evil seemed to have developed a fondness for furry time bombs.
The portal is under attack. Payday. Enemies have entered the dungeon.
Once again, a fluffy little demolition expert turned itself into a significantly less fluffy fireball. The statistically inclined evil noted, sheep population down 1, craters up 1.
There are enemies in your dungeon.
A new area has been unearthed in the dungeon.
The tactically planning evil had summoned more woolly explosive devices into battle. The Knights of the Order of Sheep would not know whether to pet them or flee from them.
Manivores have appeared in your dungeon.
It's payday.
A small dynamite sheep had just fulfilled its explosive destiny. A truly moving moment. The scouts of the Absolute Evil had heard rumors of a second entrance to the dungeon. All the tactically minded evil had to do was to clear this hero-filled area of self-appointed good guys to gain access to another dungeon entrance.
The Knights of the Order of Sheep must be trembling in their polished boots. Forward, my creatures! Free this area from these heroic troublemakers. Trample them, tear them apart. Use their helmets as salad bowls and their pikes as oversized cheese skewers.
the desperately seeking sheep evil encountered an unexpected obstacle. The sheep farm was suddenly encased in a shimmering magic shield. This extremely annoying barrier between evil and the woolly demolition experts it so desired seemed to be connected to the life signs of the nearby heroes.
There are enemies in your dungeon.
An alternative artist's obnoxiously colored carriage rolled along a nearby road. The ultimate evil would soon repaint his works in blood red. Enemies have entered the dungeon. Payday! Creatures are collecting their pay.
Boom! Another dynamite sheep had just turned itself into a spectacular fireball. The pyrotechnics-loving evil clapped its hands in delight. I'm sure the sheep would have done the same if it still had hands, or if it still existed. The wandering curious evil had discovered a particularly good being. Should this beacon of righteousness be defeated, another dungeon gate would be revealed. It's almost as if someone deliberately scattered these strategic options around the map.
Blech. That positively radiates virtue. My eyes, they're burning from so much goodness. Forward, my creatures! Get rid of it! Trample it! Squash it! Use its halo as a frisbee!
The methodically murderous evil had defeated the forces of good and conquered a new dungeon gate. And that was not all. The adjoining chamber was overflowing with treasure. Gold, jewels, magical artifacts, and probably a lost sock or two. Things I could really use myself.
Treasure! Shiny, sparkling, magical treasure! Enough gold to cast a statue of myself, life-size. No, twice as big as life. And of course, none of it's going to some lousy narrator.
But the gold and treasure were cursed. Suddenly, heroes invaded the dungeon, having snuck up from behind and therefore not been visible on the map at all.
Hey! Unfair!
It's payday.
Your little snots have dug up a spider.
another dynamite sheep had decided to change jobs from explosives courier to explosive agent. An interesting career development.
Enemies have entered the dungeon.
Enemies are in the dungeon. Enemies are in the dungeon. The bonus-grabbing evil had stored an artifact in order to unleash his powers. Payday.
More dynamite sheep took to the field at the explosion-loving evil's behest. They looked so innocent. Until you noticed the slightly manic gleam in their eyes and, of course, the ticking clocks hanging around their fluffy necks. But details, details. Inexorably advancing evil drew ever closer to the fortress of the Knights of the Order of Sheep. The architecturally mediocre home of these champions of good was about to make the acquaintance of the destructive army of evil. However, some of the knights decided not to wait for the attack and instead charged toward their enemy.
A non-musical ice cream truck was trying to sell its disgusting creamy treats near your location. The fiery evil would melt those children's ice cream dreams. Your enemies are in the dungeon.
The relentless evil had succeeded in ridding the area of all those troublesome heroes and claimed the dungeon gate for itself. This would dramatically accelerate the demise of the Knights' Order.
There are enemies in your dungeon. It's payday.
the Sweet Symphony of Destruction. A dynamite sheep had made its last big appearance. An impressive performance. The Critical Evil awarded it 9 out of 10 points. 1 point was deducted for insufficient shrapnel spread.
Your enemies are in the dungeon. Your gold vein is nearly exhausted. Enemies have entered the dungeon. Ding dong! It's payday!
The tactically planning evil had summoned more woolly explosive devices into battle. The Knights of the Order of Sheep would not know whether to pet them or flee from them. Once again, a fluffy little demolition expert turned itself into a significantly less fluffy fireball. The statistically inclined evil noted, sheep population down 1, craters up 1. With a spectacular bang, the last fog machine also bid this world farewell. The triumphantly grinning evil had actually managed to eliminate the entire foggy threat, an impressive achievement for someone whose main strategy was to send sheep out to explode.
Oh, that was amusing. Now the last few of their little knights are coming running. How cute. Forward, my creatures. Tear their armor from their bodies and make wind chimes out of it. Chop up their swords and use them as toothpicks. And then we'll plunge their fortress into chaos with a touch of annihilation and a pinch of total destruction.
There are enemies in your dungeon.
One of the towers in front of the fortress collapsed spectacularly, thanks to the architecture-critical evil's destructive efforts. However, the Knights of the Order of Sheep appeared unwilling to accept defeat with dignity and threw themselves into battle.
Payday. A gold vein has been mined out. Enemies have entered the dungeon.
A few new dynamite sheep entered the theater of battle. The creature summoning evil seemed to have developed a fondness for furry time bombs. Boom! Another dynamite sheep had just turned itself into a spectacular fireball. The pyrotechnics-loving evil clapped its hands in delight. I'm sure the sheep would have done the same if it still had hands, or if it still existed. The relentlessly hammering evil's creatures mercilessly pounded the fortress. But of course, how could it be otherwise? More knights arrived as reinforcements to prevent the inevitable.
The walls of this ridiculous fortress are crumbling faster than Tristan's self-confidence when I hide his favorite toy. Hold on. Are those even more heroes running towards us? Forward, my creatures! Crush these last defenders. Make mincemeat of their hopes. Use their full shields as serving trays for our victory celebration.
The triumphantly cheering evil had succeeded. The once proud fortress of the Knights of the Order of Sheep was now nothing more than a picturesque pile of rubble and broken dreams. The road here was lined with exploded dynamite sheep. An awful, awful lot of exploded dynamite sheep. So many that even the most hardened shepherds had to fight back tears. The victorious evil had once again proven that with enough determination, tactical skill, and a disturbingly large number of explosive-laden farm animals, nothing is impossible. And so the story ended. Our little friend Gorgu had finally given up. Counting dynamite sheep had made him incredibly tired. And not only he, but also the two eternally quarreling siblings had retired to bed and slept the sleep of the righteous, or the unjust and malicious in Talia's case. Anyway, that's it for Tales from the Campfire. Take care and good night. And don't forget, if you can't sleep, just count dynamite sheep.